Hello everyone. I am Eki Ismawati, with NPM 234122041 from Accounting Class 23A. In this video I will explain about factory overhead costs. Definition. Factory overhead costs are indirect production expenses that cannot be directly traced to specific products but are essential to the overall manufacturing process. Unlike direct costs like raw materials and direct labor, overhead includes expenses such as machine maintenance, factory rent, and salaries of indirect labor. Though not directly linked to individual units, these costs are crucial in determining total production costs and the cost of goods manufactured, thereby influencing product pricing decisions. Types of factory overhead costs. Generally, factory overhead can be classified as variable, fixed, and semi-fixed overhead costs. 1. Variable overhead costs. Variable overhead costs are those that change according to the level of production. If production increases, variable overhead costs will also increase. Conversely, if production decreases, these costs will decrease as well. Examples of variable overhead costs include energy costs, electricity, gas, used to operate production machines. Auxiliary materials costs used in production, such as lubricants or cleaners for machinery. 2. Fixed overhead costs. Fixed overhead costs remain constant regardless of changes in production volume. These costs are incurred every month or year, independent of production levels. Examples of fixed overhead costs include factory rent, which is paid regardless of the amount of product produced. Salaries of permanent employees, such as managers or supervisors working in the factory, whose salaries do not depend on the number of products produced. 3. Semi-fixed overhead costs. Semi-fixed overhead costs are those that have both fixed and variable elements. For instance, machine maintenance costs may include a fixed monthly charge for maintenance contracts, but the cost may increase if repairs or parts replacements are needed. Components of factory overhead costs. Some of the key components of factory overhead costs include 1. Salaries and wages of indirect labor. These are the wages paid to workers who are not directly involved in the production process, such as production supervisors, machine technicians, and administrative staff supporting factory operations. 2. Depreciation costs. Depreciation costs refer to the costs associated with the decline in value of fixed assets used in production, such as machinery, equipment, or factory buildings. Machines that are used over time will experience depreciation, and this cost should be accounted for as part of factory overhead. 3. Maintenance and repair costs. To ensure that machinery and equipment continue to function properly, companies must incur maintenance and repair costs regularly. These include the costs for replacing parts, repairing machines, and ensuring the factory's production facilities run efficiently. 4. Insurance costs. Insurance costs protect the production facility from potential damage or loss due to fire, natural disasters, or accidents. These costs are also part of factory overhead, as they help mitigate risks that could disrupt factory operations. 5. Utility costs. Factories require various utility services such as electricity, gas, and water to operate the production process. All costs associated with the use of these utilities are included in factory overhead costs. Factory overhead cost allocation methods. There are several methods used to allocate these overhead costs, including 1. Direct labor hour-based allocation. This method allocates factory overhead based on the number of direct labor hours used in production. The more labor hours required, the higher the overhead costs allocated to the product. 2. Machine hour-based allocation. If machines dominate the production process, overhead costs can be calculated based on the number of machine hours used. This is suitable for factories that rely heavily on machinery in production. 3. Direct materials cost-based allocation. This method allocates overhead costs based on the proportion of direct materials costs used. If a product uses more raw materials, more overhead costs will be allocated to that product. 4. Production volume-based allocation. In this method, overhead costs are distributed equally across all units produced, regardless of how much material or labor is used. Example of factory overhead cost calculation. For example, if a factory produces 10,000 units in a month and the total factory overhead costs for that month are 50 million Indonesian rupiah, using a volume-based cost allocation method, the overhead cost per unit is calculated as follows. Overhead cost per unit equals total overhead costs / total units produced equals 50 million / 10,000 equals 5,000 per unit. Thus, the factory overhead cost allocated to each unit produced is 5,000 Indonesian rupiah. This means each product requires an overhead cost of 5,000 Indonesian rupiah. So it can be concluded, factory overhead costs are an essential component of the production process that often go unnoticed but have a significant impact on the total production cost and the cost of goods manufactured. Proper management of these costs can help companies improve operational efficiency, reduce waste, and ensure competitive product pricing in the market.